today we are joined by Ronia Fraser. You are a finalist in the healthcare category of the NLP Awards, and reading your nomination, it's so inspiring, so powerful, the work that you're doing. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about the work that you are doing with narcissistic abuse?
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I would love to. I'm clearly very passionate about my work. So I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery coach, which means I work with mainly women, but not exclusively, because narcissistic abuse is not like a man does it to a woman. It doesn't discriminate against age or gender or nationality. But I work mainly with women who've experienced narcissistic abuse, so emotional, psychological abuse, and as a consequence, they are now struggling with their mental health and post-traumatic stress symptoms, complex post-traumatic stress symptoms like, severe anxiety, depression, flashbacks, nightmares, emotional overwhelm, hard to control emotions. And yeah, so my work basically gives them the support and the tools that they need, to sort themselves out and get back on their feet and become healthy and symptom free.
Mm. And reading some of the comments in your nomination, it said, narcissistic abuse is one of the most common but least acknowledged forms of abuse, with devastating consequences to the survivor.
Yes.
And what your nominee has, what the nomination has said is that winning this award would send a very strong signal to all the survivors that they are finally acknowledged and that effective help indeed exists.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that, and what, yeah, how do you deal with something that is so complex?
Well, it's needless to say, you don't work in that line of field unless it has happened to you. So I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse myself, and I was really, really severely affected by the consequences of the abuse. And for me, it literally happened overnight. So I went from being, highly functioning, independent, successful, this really like, smart, successful career woman, to having my whole life in ruins. And obviously I did feel sorry for myself for a little while, because it's just so much and you don't understand what has happened. And back then there wasn't even any content, It was literally putting the puzzle pieces together, whereas now, you type it into Google and you have a lot of information. And I just went on this mission, because I was like, hold on a second, it hasn't always been like that. Sorry, it's a motorbike, so you can cut that out. It hasn't always been like that. It literally happened overnight, when all of a sudden my life came crashing down, and I was putting the puzzle pieces together. It took about 2 years. And for me, it was just, I basically went on this mission to find something that can undo the damage as effectively as it was caused, because I just wouldn't accept that that's just it, that my life now, from now on, would just be that, just because something happened to me, And so that's how I then ended up in this work, and that's how I created my program, because I've been through it myself.
Right.
And I basically went all in, and I tried and tested everything. If you have nothing left to lose, you just, you surrender.
Absolutely.
And as I said, I went on this mission to find something that actually works, and I had no idea what that possibly could be.
Right.
And then once I found it, which was NLP, was the first major. NLP literally saved my life. And then you become really passionate about it, right? If something works, you become so passionate about it. And anyway, once I found it, it took me 5 months to become symptom free.
Right.
So I literally went from not being able to even go grocery shopping,
Right.
you know, because the anxiety was just so bad.
Yeah.
And you're in constant fear of your life,
Mm-hmm.
because every survivor has a story straight out of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I went from really not functioning at all and, you know, hanging on to dear life, to being symptom-free, healthy, starting my own company, you know, within 5 months. And needless to say, the journey is always ongoing, right?
Yeah.
So there is no magic pill, nothing will just suddenly disappear. But just to stabilize the emotional well-being and, you know, to become healthy and symptom-free, it took me 5 months. And I think because I have the business background and I have a scientific brain, I kind of kept notes, you know, and that's how I then started out working with other people. So I got my case studies, you know, and was able to develop certain patterns that apply to the healing, tools that always work, tools that work sometimes, you know. I developed a whole timeline for the survivor where they can, and I do master classes on this as well, because they're so lost, right? Where they can actually put themselves on a timeline, so they have something to hold on to. Because what I found out through my work and my own experience is that even though every story is straight out of the movies, the tactics used by the abuser are all the same. The consequences for the survivors, the symptoms they're experiencing are all the same, and everybody literally go through the same recovery journey at different speed, you know, because we are all different, depends on the commitment and all of that. However, the journey is actually always the same.
Right.
Yeah. And
modeling project.
Yes, it was. And it's still ongoing, you know, because life happens. And I wrote an ebook about the recovery timeline. And every now and then, you know, I go in and I update it because, oh, hold on a second, there's another stage, you know, because life always applies. And yeah, so cut a long story short, that's how I ended up working in this field. And because I basically had to save myself, I became very good at the whole, you know, the techniques. I modified certain techniques. I added other modalities, like time-based techniques, hypnosis, havening, to really create a very gentle, highly effective approach, you know, to minimize app reactions. And it's very specifically targeted for complex post-traumatic stress. And so when I say winning that award would send a really strong signal for the survivors. Of course, for me, it's amazing, right? Because it's an acknowledgement for my work and the impact it has. And you know, 4 years ago, I was head of finance. Right. And now I'm nominated as finalist in NLP in healthcare. I give talks at medical conferences to other medical professional therapists, you know, and I've become this, you know, leading expert in the field. So of course, winning the award would be great for me personally. It's just wow, you know. But I think even more importantly, it really is for the survivors, because up until very recently, narcissistic abuse was something that just wasn't acknowledged. It didn't exist. You know. And now it's a bit different because, as I said, there is so much content out there. Most of it really bad content. And so first of all, it would be, you know, a big signal to show the survivors, okay, you are listened to, you're heard. This actually happened. You know, we are not going to tell you to just snap out of it and get over it, you know. But then also at the same time, and that's a more recent thing, I think, and it came to my mind earlier, actually, just before the call. I think what's even more important than all of that is that it actually is a professional acknowledgement. And because there's so much bad stuff out there, so many wannabes, you know, just because you haven't, just because you've had the experience doesn't make you an expert. Because there's a big difference between experiencing it and then actually doing the work on yourself. And there is no way you can hold the space for a trauma survivor if you haven't done the work. You know, so winning the award in the healthcare field, I think that would be really huge, because it acknowledges that there is something actually professional that works. You know, so it's that whole NLP in healthcare award is very multi-layered for me as well, and I didn't expect to be in the healthcare category at all, you know. And when you called me, I was really surprised when you were like, oh, you're a finalist in healthcare. I was like, what? And that actually opened the door in my head that I didn't even know was there, because before I just saw myself as this business person. And after the nomination, I actually dedicated 2020 to exactly that purpose, the healthcare. You know, going out there, giving talks. I gave a talk for the Swedish NLP community. I was invited to speak there. Spoke at the International Havening Conference, and a lot of Havening people are NLP people, because it's so complementary, you know. And now I'm actually working on developing like a training program, a CPD program, because I've been asked now to put something together so I can actually not only raise awareness of the topic, but actually train other NLP practitioners to facilitate, you know.
Wow. Okay, so you've actually answered my next question already.
Oh yeah, so.
Which is wonderful. Thank you. So I'm just going to draw back to some of the lovely comments that are in your nomination. And I think this one especially, it really kind of resonated. So this particular person said that working with you, it was like flying a plane through darkness, completely out of control, until you came on board. You gave it back direction and landed it gently and safely in the light, which is such a beautiful metaphor. And I think really easily enables other people to understand how you're supporting these survivors of narcissistic abuse. And somebody else has written, you have freed me from the prison of my own mind. My world has shifted. I'm not walking in a feeling of darkness anymore. So when you hear things like that about the work that you're doing, how does that make you feel?
Oh, I've cried on occasion. Because it's very touching, you know. And I mean, I'm not putting the work in, they're putting the work in. I just give them the tools, you know. But then seeing this transformation, and because it's so profound and pretty quick as well, you know. I've had some, especially when it's testimonials you don't ask for, but they just feel the need to share it, you know. So you can actually, you can feel that they weren't sitting there and thinking about it, what they would write, but or what they should write. But it actually comes from the heart. And some of them, you know, it's very, very touching.
Absolutely. I mean, inspirational, and a true testament to the work that you are doing and the impact you are making with the work that you're doing. So moving this slightly differently, who or maybe what has inspired you on your NLP journey?
Who or what has inspired me? That's a good question. Well, NLP in general, as I said, for me, was like a life saver. And just realizing how much power you hold over yourself and things that you can change. And it doesn't have to be all this, you know, really severe trauma stuff. It can be just I don't want to eat that much chocolate anymore, you know. So you just play around. And I have my own coach, and I mean, I personally think everybody should have a coach that has an NLP background, because it's just so powerful. And some of the things that we've worked through together has just been absolutely incredible. I mean, I lead a life now that 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I couldn't have even imagined. When you weed out your garden and you let go of all this baggage and become this really authentic self, and basically recover who you were always meant to be in the first place. And I think there are so many aspects of NLP that are so inspiring, empowering. There isn't like one thing in particular. I don't think it's like the whole concept, the opportunity that you get to actually make the impossible possible. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you do. I'm the same. I do have an NLP coach as well. Walking the talk from that perspective. And as you say, it is so empowering and powerful that the toolbox as a whole, isn't it? Is what's there to at your fingertips.
Exactly. And because the toolbox is so multi-layer, there isn't just one tool. It's just so much you can use in many different ways. You can modify, you can put together, so it works differently. And if you think about narcissistic abuse and where I started from, narcissistic abuse is calculated emotional blackmail and really calculated brainwash. So the whole damage that we're dealing with is literally neurological and linguistically. And that's why NLP is so powerful, because it reverses literally the damage in a very similar way that it was caused, where you take control over your programming, the language you use, because they put a lot of ideas in your head, the way they talk to you, the way you start talking about yourself. And the power of language is so incredible. And then, you know, like just certain techniques. And I mean, I wrote the article for the Rapport magazine as well, where I'm, you know, addressing some of the NLP techniques that are super effective. And I think that's the beautiful thing about NLP, because it's just so vast and always evolving as well. There's always something new to try out. And
absolutely. So where would you like to see NLP in the future?
Where would I like to see NLP in the future? Really acknowledged as a professional modality in the therapeutic field, because the difference it makes is just so incredible. And really, you know, having the sign off that you can actually use it in the medical field, to have that acknowledgement that the tools actually work, that it's not hocus pocus. And I mean, I love the work that you guys do to really regulate it more, and, you know, just raising the bar. So it really has this professional feel to it, because I think, especially when you work in trauma recovery like I do, it's very, very important that you have the right credentials, that people have the trust in the modality, even if they may not know what it is. But just that it's like a real thing. And there is a lot of I mean, there's so many coaches now, and narcissistic abuse recovery coaches, narcissistic abuse experts, and all of that. So I think it's really, really important that it's seen as a professional tool.
And that's a brilliant aspiration, which of course we share. So thank you, Ronnie, for having this conversation, because it, as I said, it really brings to life and makes it much more understandable the depth of your work and the impact that it's having in the area that you're working in, which, as I said, is very, very inspirational. And it's really important to understand how many people are being positively impacted and inspired by the work that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
That you are making.